The semicolon and the colon. These two punctuation marks are sometimes confused by students, but they actually have very different meanings, and they're not so hard to use once you know how. A semicolon is a period on top of a comma, and a colon is a period on top of a period. And the following examples come from chopchop.com. The first way to use a semicolon is to connect two independent sentences that are closely related. So you have a complete sentence, semicolon, another complete sentence. Here's an example. My 81-year-old grandmother still rides her Harley motorcycle. Her toy poodle balances in a basket between the handlebars. So both of these are complete sentences, and they're closely related. They're both talking about what happens on the motorcycle. So a semicolon here is important. If you notice when I read it, my pause wasn't as long as a period, but it was longer than a comma, and that's actually how you would read a semicolon, as a stop that's halfway between a comma and a period. So let's listen to the same sentence with different punctuation. Sydney and Erica love to ride bikes. They enjoy riding all over the neighborhood. Sydney and Erica love to ride bikes, and they enjoy riding all over the neighborhood. Sydney and Erica love to ride bikes. They enjoy riding all over the neighborhood. So here you can actually hear how I'm reading the punctuation. So in the first example, I had two independent clauses, which are complete sentences, separated by periods, so my pause was longer between bikes and they. And the second one, this is actually a comma before a conjunction, so it was a little bit shorter of a pause. And this last one was the semicolon, and the pause was halfway between a period and a comma. All of these ways of writing this sentence are correct. However, when you start using the semicolon, your paper automatically starts looking a little bit more formal. You could also use the semicolon with a transition to connect two complete sentences that are close in meaning. So the pattern looks like this. Complete sentence, semicolon, transition, comma, another complete sentence. The transition word here is also called a conjunctive adverb. So you'll want to look at my conjunctive adverb worksheet also. Here's the example. My father does not approve of his mother cruising around town on a Harley motorcycle. However, Grandma has never cared what anyone thinks. So both these ideas are closely related. These sentences are closely related, but we have a transition word of however. In this sentence, however, is telling us a change is coming. So Grandma doesn't care what he thinks, even though he doesn't like it. If you take out the semicolon and capitalize however, you have a complete sentence. So it still keeps with the same rule. The last way to use a semicolon properly is to avoid confusion when you have complicated lists of items. So for example, if you have a list that has its own internal punctuation, sometimes it's easier for the reader if you have a semicolon between them. So here's an example. On a Harley motorcycle, my grandmother and her poodle have traveled to Anchorage, Alaska, San Francisco, California, and Tijuana, Mexico. You see that it's a list of 3 places, and the comma goes between the city and the state, or the city and the country in the Mexico example. If you had commas where the semicolons are, you would have a lot of commas, and it would be frustrating for the reader to figure out exactly how to read it. Special note about such as. Many students use semicolons when they use the phrase such as. However, this is incorrect. You place a comma before such as, and then list your items, making sure to follow the rules of writing items in a series. So this means, commas between the items and before the conjunction. So here are some examples. On a Harley motorcycle, my grandma and her poodle have traveled to many places, such as Anchorage, Alaska, San Francisco, California, and Tijuana, Mexico. Or, on a Harley motorcycle, my grandmother and her poodle have traveled to many places, such as Alaska, California, and Mexico. Here are a few reminders about semicolon use, just to recap what we've already said. So you need to keep these things in mind when you're using the semicolon. The 2 main clauses, independent clauses, that the semicolon joins should be closely related in meaning. Do not capitalize the word that follows the semicolon unless that word is a proper noun, which is always capitalized. And limit your use of semicolons. You only need to use them when you need to use them. You don't want to just start putting them in all over the place because you think it'll make the writing more sophisticated. You have to listen to how the sentences flow together Listen for the right kind of pause and either choose a comma in a conjunction, a semicolon, or a period in a new sentence. Now I want to talk about the colon, and I've gotten information from this from Purdue University's online writing lab. Use a colon after a complete statement or an independent clause in order to introduce one or more directly related ideas, such as a series of directions, a list, or a quotation or other comment illustrating or explaining the statement. For example, the strategies of corporatist industrial unionism have proven ineffective. Compromises and concessions have left labor in a weakened position in the new flexible economy. So the colon here, it functions like a period, okay? Except what comes after it is giving more information about what came before it. But notice that it is a complete sentence all the way before the colon. You use it to introduce a list. The daily newspaper contains 4 sections: news, sports, entertainment, and classified ads. Notice how the colon is used here. It's after a complete sentence. So you would not say the daily newspaper contains colon, because the daily newspaper contains is not a complete sentence. So you have to have the full complete sentence and then the list. You also use it between the hour and minutes. He said he would be home by 5:30 p.m. Between chapter and verse and biblical references. He always liked to refer to Genesis chapter 1, verse 18 when starting a speech. Where not to use a colon. After an incomplete sentence that introduces a list. For example, send checker money order to 221 Barnwell Street, Columbus, Georgia, 22234. In this example, to correct it, you just take out the colon and you just say send checker money order to, and you provide the address. A little word of caution. Space once between a colon and the next word when the colon is used between words. Do not space between numerals and a colon when a colon is used to mark time or ratios.